So I know I've been teasing you guys on this idea about a quadratic equation having a graph, and that graph can either be a smiley face or a sad face, but I haven't shown you guys how I can go from having a quadratic equation to having a smiley face or even a sad face. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to take a very simple quadratic expression, which is basically x squared. And we know it's a quadratic expression because it follows the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So of course in this equation I don't have a b or a c, so that means that they are most likely 0, and I have an x squared, so that means that my a is equal to 1. But that's not the point. Point is, how do I turn this quadratic expression into a smiley face or a sad face? Well, of course, if you want to turn something into a graph, you obviously need to have the axes for that graph first. So I can just draw the axes over here, something like this. So this can be our axes. And this is actually going to be the y-axis. This is going to be the x-axis. Let's label a few values over here. This is going to be the origin, where x is 0, y is 0. And then this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, obviously, these are not drawn to scale because I'm using my hand and just my hand, no ruler or anything. So obviously, they're not going to be perfect, but you can kind of imagine that they're perfect. This is -5, -6, and then we can draw the y values. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, and so on. And then we have -1 over here. This can be -2, this can be -3, this can be -4, this can be -5, this can be -6, and then so on. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to realize that the first step you basically take with this is when you have your quadratic expression, it can be anything. In my case, it's x squared. In your case, it could be something like 3x squared plus 5x plus 16. It could be any quadratic expression. The first thing you want to do is you want to put this thing equal to 0. You want to put this thing equal to y. And then what you want to do is you just want to start plugging in values for x. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So this is my quadratic expression. I put it equal to y. That was my first step. And now I'm just going to put in values over here. So the first value I'm going to put for x is going to be 0. So what is my y when my x is equal to 0? And I can solve this thing out, and I'm basically going to get 0. And then I go on my graph, and I put a point over here, right at the middle. And why do I do that? Well, that is because when my x is equal to 0, my y is also equal to 0. So I just put a spot over there. The next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead, put a 1 over here in place of x. So what is my y value when my x is equal to 1? And I find out that 1 squared is obviously going to be 1, so my y value is going to be 1. Now I'm going to do the same for when x is -1, and I basically find out that obviously -1 times -1 is going to be +1, so my y value is going to be 1. So what I found out was that when my x was equal to 1, my y was also equal to 1, so I put a dot over here. So my x is 1 and my y is also 1. And in the same way, when my x was -1, my y was equal to 1, and so I put a dot over here. Now what I do is I do the same step for 2. So what is my y when my x is equal to 2? And then what is my y when my x is equal to -2? And so you can basically solve this out, and you will get 4, and you will get 4. So my when my x is equal to 2, my y value is equal to 4, so I put a dot right over here. This dot corresponds to the fact that my x is equal to 2 and my y is equal to 4. And so I basically do the same thing for -2. When my x is -2, my y is equal to 4, so I put a dot up there. And you can obviously do this process for 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And what you'll find out is that if you connect all of those dots, you basically get something that sort of looks like this, which is clearly a smiley face. Now, when do we get a sad face? So you get a sad face when you have a quadratic equation and the a of that quadratic equation is a negative value. That's when you get a sad face. So let's say if I have something that looks like -3x squared plus 5x plus c, my bad, plus 4, then I can basically compare it to the form ax squared plus bx plus c. C is +4, b is +5, and a is actually -3. So in this case, if I draw the quadratic equation, if I draw a graph for this quadratic equation, it's going to be a sad face. And how did I tell that? Well, basically I looked at the a. If the a is positive, we get smiley faces. If it's a positive value, we get a smiley face. And if it's a negative value, we get a sad face. So you can kind of sort of understand it as negativity leading to sadness and positivity leading to you smiling. I'm just going to show you guys. So I can take another quadratic expression, which can be -x squared. And all I got to do is to turn this into a graph, I got to put this equal to y. So it's going to be y equals -x squared. And I'm going to repeat the exact same process. I'm just going to put values of x in here and see what are the values of y that I get for those. So I'm going to put 0 in here, and this is basically going to be, I put 0 in place of my x, and when I solve this out, I basically get 0, because you square 0, it's going to be 0. You multiply it with a negative number, it's still going to be 0. So I put a dot right there in the middle, in the origin, where my x is 0 and my y is 0. Then I can go ahead and do this for x when x is equal to 1. And so what is my y value when my x value is equal to 1? So I could just put 1 in here, square that, and then I basically realize that you square 1, it's going to stay 1. You multiply it with a negative number, it's going to be negative 1. I can go ahead and do the same for negative 1, and what I realize is that if I square a negative number, it becomes a positive number. So negative 1 multiplied by negative 1 is going to be positive 1, and then I multiplied with a negative number, so it's just going to be negative 1. So I can go ahead and put these points on my graph. I can say that, oh, when my x was 1, my y was basically negative 1, so I put a point over here. And then when my x was negative 1, my y was also equal to negative 1, so I put a point over there. Then I can go ahead and do this for 2. So what is my y when my x is going to be positive 2? And I can basically find that out. So 2 squared is 4, multiplied with a negative, that's just going to be negative 4. I can do the same for negative 2. So what is my y when my x is negative 2? You square negative 2, you're going to get 4. You multiply 4 with a negative number, you're going to end up with negative 4. Now I can just go ahead and put these points on my graph. So when my x is 2, when my x is positive 2, my y is negative 4. So I can go ahead and put a point over here. And when my x is negative 2, my y is negative 4, so I can go ahead put a point over here. And then you can go ahead do these for 3, negative 3, 4, negative 4, 5, negative 5, and so on. And what you realize is that if you draw a line, or you just try and go ahead, you connect these dots out. So I'm just going to go ahead, connect these dots. They resemble a sad face. This right here is a sad face. That up there was a smiley face. That is how you basically get sad faces and smiley faces from your quadratic equations. Now go ahead and try it out for, let's say, 3x squared plus 5x. Go ahead, do it for this quadratic equation, okay? All you got to do is you're going to put this equal to y, and you're going to get y equals 3x squared plus 5x. You first go ahead, put the values of 0 in here, so you put a 0 in here, put a 0 in here, see what your y is going to be, then you take a 1, put it over here, put it over here, see what the y is going to be. Then you put a 2 in there, put a 3 in there, put a negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, connect all the dots, see what kind of graph you get. So this isn't the most fastest way of drawing a graph. This is definitely not the fastest way of getting your smiley face or getting your sad face. It's definitely not the most efficient way either, so you never want to do this. I'm just doing this to show you guys how you can get a smiley face or a sad face from a quadratic equation, but in future videos I'll basically show you more efficient ways, more faster ways of doing this process. The key thing to remember over here is that your quadratic equation has two faces, a smiley face or a sad face, and how and what face is it going to be? Well, you can basically decide that by looking at the a. So if your equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, then all you want to do is you want to look at this a over here. If this a is positive, then of course positivity is going to lead to smiley faces. If this a is negative, then obviously negativity is going to lead to sad faces. So you can basically judge if a quadratic equation is going to have a smiley face or a sad face by just looking at this equation. You don't even have to draw a graph. If you just look at what the sign of this a value is, then you can basically judge if it's going to be a smiley face or if it's going to be a sad face.